Before we jump into today's specific topic, I want to zoom out for just a minute and talk about where we've been and where we are headed in the intermediate accounting sequence. Up until now, this class has focused on theory and regulation, the accounting cycle, the financial statements, including the statement of cash flows, and we've just wrapped up revenue recognition. Now your path forward through this class and the next is largely organized around the balance sheet. For the rest of Accounting 3010, we're going to work through several major asset categories, and we'll start today with cash, then move through receivables, inventory, and so forth. Then in Accounting 3020, you will continue that journey through liabilities, equity, and then some other special topics. So in one sense, today's topic is the beginning of a much larger balance sheet sequence. And we're going to start with the most basic asset there is, cash. But even with something as familiar as cash, accounting has some important classification rules. So with that broader roadmap in mind, let's start with the basic question. What items are strictly considered as cash? Well, first, it includes currency and coin on hand. That means the actual dollar bills and coins that a company has available, maybe in cash registers, petty cash box, or a safe. But cash also includes balances in checking accounts, as well as items that are acceptable for deposit, such as checks and money orders. If a customer gives the company a check, the company has not yet received physical currency, but it has received an item that can and will normally be deposited into a bank account in short order. So for financial reporting purposes, we generally think of it as cash. The key idea is availability. These are funds that are readily available for use in operations. In other words, the company does not need to sell an investment or wait for some maturity period or go through any other complicated process to convert these into spendable money. They are already spendable or extremely close to being able to be spent. But now let's add an additional category, cash equivalents. In practice, companies do not hold all of their liquid funds as physical currency or checking account balances. If a company has extra cash that it does not need today, it might put that money into very short-term, low-risk investments. And for financial reporting, they are presented along with cash as a single line item on the balance sheet, as cash and cash equivalents. So let's jump into these items that are as good as or equivalent to cash. We've got things like savings accounts, money market funds, treasury bills, certificates of deposit, and commercial paper. They are all short-term, highly liquid, and generally intended to preserve value rather than generate large investment returns. So why might a company have any or all of these types of holdings? Think about a mid-sized company with several $1,000,000 available for near-term needs. It's not going to want all of that sitting as a physical cash pile, and it may not want all of it sitting in a regular checking account. Instead, the company might place those funds in instruments that can earn a modest return while still remaining very accessible. For accounting purposes, we are asking, is this resource basically available for use as cash? And if the answer is yes, and if it meets the requirements we'll discuss next, then it may be classified as a cash equivalent. So there are two important considerations to keep in mind when deciding whether something belongs with cash and cash equivalents. First, the maturity date matters. To be treated as a short-term cash equivalent investment, it must have a maturity date of no longer than 90 days from the date of purchase. And that last phrase is important, from the date of purchase. For example, suppose a company buys a treasury bill that matures in 60 days. Well, that could potentially qualify as a cash equivalent, assuming the other criteria are met. But now let's consider a company that buys a bond investment that originally matures in 5 years, even if there are only 60 days left before maturity at the balance sheet date. That's an entirely different scenario. The focus is on the maturity when the company purchased the investment, not just the time remaining at period end. The reason for this is that cash equivalents should reflect funds that management intentionally placed into very short-term, highly liquid instruments. We don't want companies reclassifying long-term investments as cash equivalents simply because they happen to be close to maturity now. Second, let's talk about restricted cash. Restricted cash refers to funds that have been set aside for a specific purpose. Sometimes the restriction is informal, meaning that management has simply designated the funds for a particular use. Other times, the restriction is contractual, meaning the company is legally required to keep the funds separate or maintain a certain balance. For example, a company might set aside cash for a special construction project. Or a bank loan may require the company to maintain a compensating balance, which means that a certain amount of cash must stay in the bank account as part of the loan arrangement. The important point here is that restricted cash is not available for general operating use. Because of that, it is usually reported separately from regular cash and cash equivalents. If the restriction is long-term, it is reported as a non-current asset. And this classification can help financial statement users have a better understanding of the company's real liquidity. If money is tied up for other uses, we don't really want to think of it alongside our current assets. Finally, let's talk briefly about cryptocurrency and other digital assets. This is a useful comparison because many people casually refer to cryptocurrency as digital money. But for financial reporting purposes, crypto is not classified as a cash or cash equivalent. Digital assets exist only in electronic form. Their value is supported by market demand, blockchain technology, and expectations about their future use or resale. But they are generally not backed by any government authority, and they usually do not represent a claim to an underlying asset like traditional currencies. The key point here is that the value of these assets are quite volatile. Market prices for crypto can change dramatically, and that makes them very different from checking account balances or treasury bills or other short-term instruments that are meant to preserve value. So even though cryptocurrency may be used in some settings as a medium of exchange, it does not meet the accounting definition of cash or cash equivalents. Instead, digital assets are treated more like investments or other specialized assets depending on the applicable accounting guidance. But these are becoming increasingly relevant, and the SEC and FASB continue to explore how to regulate and account for these assets.